There's a man sitting in the sun outside a wine jar. Not a barrel. History got that wrong. A pythos. A ceramic storage jar, big enough to curl up inside, thrown away by someone who cracked it, and claimed by a man who had decided that a roof was just another thing to maintain. He is eating onions. He owns the clothes on his back, a walking stick, a leather pouch, and, for now, a wooden cup. And here is the strange thing. The thing 2,300 years haven't been able to sand down. He may be the freest human being who ever lived. Nobody can fire him, evict him, blackmail him, flatter him, or take anything from him, because there is nothing left to take. He has made himself, deliberately, and with full awareness of the cost, invulnerable to loss. His name is Diogenes, and his idea is still dangerous. Not dangerous like a weapon, dangerous like a question you can't unhear. What would be left of you if everything you own lost its power over you? Now, come forward 23 centuries to a city that runs on the opposite idea. A man named Arthur is waking up in Scarsdale at 6:14 a.m. He owns a house, a car, a television, a second television, and a closet full of gray suits. He has everything Diogenes threw away. He is also, although he would never use this word at the country club, afraid, all the time, at a low hum, the way a refrigerator hums. This video is about the distance between those two men, and about the 5 surrenders that separate them. Stay with the fourth one. The fourth surrender is the one that humiliated the most powerful man on earth. We'll get there. Diogenes did not start out as a philosopher. He started out as a criminal. He came from Sinope, a Greek colony on the Black Sea, where his father ran the mint. And sometime around 350 BC, the coins of Sinope started showing up defaced. The official stamp hammered over, the currency adulterated. Diogenes was implicated, exiled, struck from the citizen rolls, which in the ancient world was a kind of death. No city, no name, no protection. Most exiles spend the rest of their lives trying to get back in. Diogenes treated the sentence as a promotion. When someone later taunted him, "The Sinopeans condemned you to exile," he answered, "And I condemned them to stay in Sinope." He decided to do philosophically what he'd been condemned for doing literally. Take every coin his civilization had minted, every agreed-upon measure of what a life is worth, status, property, reputation, comfort, and hammer over the stamp. He arrived in Athens owning almost nothing, and set about proving that almost was still too much. In 1957, a journalist named Vance Packard published The Hidden Persuaders, documenting how Arthur's industry, advertising, had stopped selling products and started manufacturing needs, using depth psychology to find the soft, frightened parts of people and attach products to them. Arthur read neither that book nor any other warning. Arthur was too busy working on a campaign that convinced mothers their love was measurable in the whiteness of their laundry. He was very good at his job. That was part of the problem. The first surrender, things. The story goes that Diogenes was walking through Athens one day, carrying his wooden cup, his one piece of kitchen equipment, when he stopped at a fountain. A boy was there drinking. No cup, just cupped hands. Diogenes watched him for a moment. Then he took out his own cup, looked at it, and threw it away. "A child," he said, "has beaten me in plainness of living. Understand what just happened. this was not decluttering. This was a man running an experiment on himself with no control group. Take the thing away and see if you die. He didn't die. That's the whole finding. Every possession is a hypothesis about what you need to survive, and the hypothesis is almost never tested. Diogenes tested them all, one at a time, and kept discarding. Socrates used to walk through the Athenian market, past stalls of silks and spices and bronzework, and say, "How many things there are that I do not want." Arthur's house contains roughly 4,000 objects. He could not tell you what a third of them are for. In 1978, researchers Brickman, Coates, and Janoff Bullman published one of the most quietly devastating studies in psychology. They interviewed lottery winners and people paralyzed in accidents and measured their happiness. The lottery winners were not meaningfully happier than anyone else, and they took less pleasure in ordinary daily events. The pleasure had been spent. The researchers gave the phenomenon its name: hedonic adaptation. You get the thing. The thing becomes the new normal. The wanting doesn't shrink. It relocates to the next thing. Arthur knew this. Arthur had watched himself do it with a color television in 1961. The miracle lasted 11 days. The first surrender is things. Not because things are evil, Diogenes enjoyed his onions, but because everything you own owns a small percentage of your attention, your fear, and your freedom of movement. Diogenes called the sum of that percentage your price. He decided to stop paying it. The second surrender: approval. Plato, from the height of the Academy, once offered a definition. Man is a featherless biped. It was celebrated. It was quoted. It was philosophy. The next day, Diogenes walked into the Academy, holding a plucked chicken. "Behold," he announced, "Plato's man." You have to picture the room, the most prestigious intellectual institution in the Western world. The man walks in off the street, uninvited, unwashed, unemployable, and dismantles the proceedings with poultry. This was not a one-time performance. He walked through Athens in broad daylight, carrying a lit lantern, saying, "I am looking for an honest man." When people threw bones at him and called him a dog, he didn't deny it. He adopted the insult. The school he founded is called the Cynics, from Chion, the dog. Plato's verdict on the whole man: a Socrates gone mad. He meant it as an insult. History has not been so sure. Arthur has never once been called a dog. Arthur is, by every measure his world keeps, a success. And he maintains that success the way you maintain a nuclear reactor. Continuous, vigilant, exhausting input. He has calibrated his house, his wife's dresses, his children's schools, his jokes at the office, all of it, to the imagined reaction of an audience he has never actually met. Here is the second surrender: approval. And here is what Diogenes understood that Arthur doesn't. The approval of a crowd is a currency that devalues the moment you need it most. The same Athenians who laughed at Diogenes' lantern also fell silent when he spoke. He had bought that silence. The price was their good opinion, paid in full, in advance, forever. But approval was the easy surrender. The third one is the body itself. The third surrender: comfort. The jar was not a stunt. Athens has real winters. The rain comes sideways off the Saronic Gulf, and the marble holds the cold like a grudge. Diogenes slept in his jar through it. He trained himself, deliberately, like an athlete, to endure. He would hug statues in winter when they were covered in snow, he said, to practice. He called this ascesis, training, the same word the boxers used. His logic was this: comfort is not a state, it's an addiction curve. The soft bed of tonight becomes the minimum requirement of tomorrow. Every luxury you adapt to becomes, silently, a new floor, and the distance between that floor and the ground is the distance you can fall. That's what fear is made of, not danger. The possibility of descent. A man who has slept on stone is not afraid of the future. There's almost nothing the future can threaten him with. Seneca, the richest man in Rome, used to practice poverty on a schedule, plain food, rough blanket, asking himself, is this what I used to dread? And it was Seneca who wrote the sentence Arthur needed to hear. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. Arthur's house is climate-controlled. Arthur has never once been too cold. And Arthur is terrified of 1964, of the merger rumors, of the younger men with narrower ties, of the mortgage that requires the job, that requires the smile, that requires the pills his doctor jokes about. The third surrender is comfort, and Diogenes' point was not that suffering is noble. It was that a man who cannot voluntarily endure small discomforts is a hostage to every large one. Arthur's fear has never once been tested against reality. It just grows in the dark, like anything you refuse to look at. The fourth surrender, power, and the most famous conversation in history. And now the moment the whole video has been circling. Corinth, around 336 BC. Diogenes is old now, living in his jar near the Cranion, a cypress grove outside the city, and word arrives that the young king of Macedon is in the city, Alexander. 20 years old, already master of Greece, already being called in some rooms a god. Alexander has heard of the strange philosopher. He comes to see him, with his retinue, his generals, the whole machinery of power at his back. He finds the old man lying in the sun. Picture the frame. The most powerful human being alive, the man who will soon own Egypt, Persia, everything to the Indus, standing over a man who owns a stick and a pouch. Alexander speaks first. I am Alexander, the great king. Diogenes. And I am Diogenes the dog. And Alexander, to his credit, and this is why the story survived, does not take offense. He makes the offer that has ended every such encounter in human history. Ask me for anything you want. Anything. The treasury of an empire, opened by one sentence. Every human being who has ever lived would have asked for something. Diogenes looks up at him and says, yes, stand a little out of my sun. The emperor of the world is blocking his light. That's the whole request. Understand what just happened. Every king's power rests on one foundation, the ability to give and withhold what others need. Diogenes needed nothing. The foundation dissolved under Alexander's feet, in public, in 4 words. And Alexander, the historians record this, turned to his companions and said the most honest sentence of his life. If I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes. Arthur is at a party in the executive suite. The president of the agency is holding court by the window. A small Alexander, with a view of the park instead of an empire. And Arthur watches the men around him lean in, laugh on schedule, angle for the word, the nod, the account. And for one strange, clear second, it passes. It always passes. Arthur sees the whole room, the way Diogenes would have seen it. A crowd of free men, queuing up to ask a man in a gray suit for permission to want things. The fourth surrender is power. Not the power you hold, the power others hold over you, which exists only because there is something they can give you that you have agreed to need. Cancel the need, and the most powerful man on earth is just somebody standing in your light. The dark phase, what the freedom costs. Now, we have to be honest, because this is where every beautiful idea is murdered by its admirers. The title of this video says, Dangerous Freedom. Here is the danger. Diogenes was, by any modern reading, alone. No wife, no children, no home anyone was welcomed into. He was mocked his whole life. The bone-throwing was real. And he was kidnapped by pirates, chained, and sold on a slave block in Crete. Typical of him. When the auctioneer asked what he was good at, he pointed at a man in the crowd, Zenaides of Corinth, and said, "Sell me to him. He needs a master." Zenaides, astonishingly, bought him, and Diogenes spent his last years tutoring the man's sons. But sit with the scene before the joke. Chains, a block. Strangers bidding on your body. The freedom of needing nothing does not protect you from the world. It only protects you from the world's leverage. And there is a darker edge underneath that one. Needing nothing is one breath away from needing no one. And a man who needs no one is free in exactly the way an empty house is clean. He never quite solved the difference between sovereignty and exile. Remember, he began as an exile. He just made a philosophy of it, the way some men make a philosophy of their wounds. And the opposite road has its own darkness. The decade after 1963 would prove it. Thousands of Arthur's children heading for communes in New Mexico, chasing Diogenes' freedom without Diogenes' training. By 1971, most of those communes were empty. It turns out you cannot throw away the cup if you never learned to drink from your hands. So the danger cuts both ways. Keep everything, and you are a hostage. Throw it all away on impulse, and you are a refugee. The question was never, how much do you own? It is what could you lose without ceasing to be yourself. Only one surrender remains. Diogenes saved it for the end of his life, because it was the end of his life. The fifth surrender, the future, and the last joke. Diogenes died in 323 BC, in Corinth, at nearly 90. Legend says it was the very same day Alexander died in Babylon. Two men who had met once in the sunlight, exiting the world together. The one who owned everything, and the one who owned nothing, both leaving with exactly the same luggage. Before he died, his students asked him about burial. His answer? Throw me outside the city walls to the dogs. Horrified, they asked, Won't you be torn apart? Then give me a stick, he said, to drive them away. But you'll be dead, they said. You won't feel anything. He smiled. If I won't feel anything, what do I care what the dogs do to the body? That is the fifth surrender, the future. The last thing every human being owns is the story of what will happen after they stop happening. the reputation, the legacy, the opinion of people not yet born. It is the final possession, and the one nobody thinks to test. Diogenes tested it, and found, one last time, that he didn't die. Corinth buried him properly anyway. Over his grave, the city placed a marble pillar, and on top of it, a statue of a dog. And Arthur, 1963 becomes 1964 the way it does. Arthur does not throw his briefcase into the Hudson. Diogenes would not have asked him to. But one evening, and this is the only scene in this video I will ask you to picture slowly, Arthur comes home from the station, and instead of going inside, he sits down on the low wall at the end of his own driveway. The sun is doing something orange over the rooftops. The house behind him hums with 4,000 objects, and the mortgage, and the opinion of the neighbors. And Arthur sits there, in the last of the light, and conducts Diogenes' experiment on the smallest possible scale. He asks himself one question. Of everything I own, what is the first thing I could lose and still be me? He doesn't have an answer yet. That's fine. The question is the cup being thrown away. It always starts smaller than you think. Diogenes owned a stick, a pouch, and, briefly, a cup. And when Alexander offered him the world, he asked the man to stop blocking his sun. You probably can't do that. You're not supposed to do that. But somewhere between the jar and the 4,000 object house, there's a number of things that is yours. A weight you could carry through any door, out of any burning building, into any 1964. And the only way to find it is the way he found it. Take something away. See if you die. You won't. That's the dangerous part. Once you know you won't die, you can't be bought. You can't be threatened. You can't be managed. Ask Alexander what that feels like from the other side. If this one landed, subscribe. Next in the series. The Stoic art of not caring without becoming cold. Stand out of your own sun.